In our headlines on this Thursday, May 8th, here in South Korea, the leadership of the Conservative Party and its contender continue to clash over the creation of a coalition, while the Liberal Party's presidential contender meets with the heads of Korea's 5 major business entities. Meanwhile, North Korea launches a series of short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea in its latest display of military defiance amid brewing tensions on the peninsula. Over in the US, the Federal Reserve maintains its benchmark short-term rate at a range of 4.25% to 4.5% for the third straight session, as it opts for a wait-and-see approach to the broader ripple effects of the Trump administration's tariffs. We start on the local political front as South Korea now counts down 26 days to its presidential election on June 3rd. I have our correspondent Oh Soo-young standing by live on the line with the latest. Soo-young, welcome. Let's begin then with the meeting between Conservative candidate Kim Moon-soo and former acting President Han Duck-soo. Soo-young.
Sure, Sonny. So Kim Moon-soo and Han Duck-soo met at 4:33 p.m. This afternoon to hold a second round of talks at the National Assembly to discuss forming a joint bid for the presidential election. Now, in a fashion unprecedented in modern Korean politics, the two greeted each other and seated themselves at an outdoor cafe table for a televised discussion. But their swapping of smiles and small talk have turned into a heated exchange, as Kim continually raised an issue with Han's relatively late entry to the race, and his remark from yesterday that he wouldn't run unless a merger was decided before the May 11th deadline for candidate registrations. Han stressed that there is no time to lose amid pressing economic and geopolitical issues, and he renewed pressure on him to not stall the process of joining forces, saying that their union is the command of the people. He reiterated that he would do all that the party wants for the merger to work and stressed how Kim had pledged to merge with him at least 22 times in recent weeks. The PPP has been pushing for its main candidate Kim and former PM Han, who's running as an independent, to join forces in the presidential race against their main opponent, the Democratic Party candidate Lee Jae-myung, who currently leads the polls. Han and Kim they've come second and third respectively in recent public surveys. Now, after emerging as the leading PPP candidate in last week's primary, Kim has angrily resisted the party's rush to merge with Han, arguing that he, as the candidate, should be the one to set the terms. Kim on Thursday morning accused party leaders of illegal and undemocratic moves to thwart his candidacy in favor of the former PM, and suggested that they campaign separately for a week before a live debate on Wednesday. He more or less blamed Han for the lack of outcome from their first round of talks on Wednesday, insinuating that the former PM has aligned himself with the PPP leadership. Han and Kim are now continuing their discussion as we speak, so I'll keep you updated.
Right, and against that backdrop, Soo-young, I hear conflict continues between the Conservative Party candidate Kim Moon-soo and, of course, the party's leadership.
Yes, the PPP leadership has slammed Kim for his resistance to their roadmap towards joining forces with Han Duck-soo, suggesting that a change of the party candidate hasn't been decided but is technically possible. While they can't go ahead with a televised debate tonight as they originally planned, because Kim Moon-soo has, of course, refused to take part, the party will still conduct a poll on the two candidates from 7 p.m. tonight until 4 p.m. on Friday. Now, some PPP members, including former presidential contenders, have come to Kim's defense, accusing the leadership of undermining the party's candidacy procedures. But spokesperson Shin Dong-wook tried to justify the push for a merger, noting that 87% of PPP members support a Kim-Han union before May 11th. Senior figures, including floor leader Kwon Dong-dong and former leader Kim Moon-soo, have declared hunger strikes to call for a fast merger.
Right, I see. Meanwhile, Soo-young, what's the latest at the Liberal camp?
Well, Lee Jae-myung, the Democratic Party candidate, has been accelerating his economic campaign after the court postpones one of his trials on violating election laws until after the June 3rd vote. On Wednesday, he met with the leaders of Korea's 5 major business associations, vowing to revive livelihoods through pro-business policies. He is also scheduled to hold a live YouTube debate with popular economic influencers in an apparent bid to appeal to centrists. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Seong, thank you for that coverage, and do keep us posted throughout the day. Moving on then, earlier on this Thursday morning, North Korea launched a series of short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea in its latest display of blatant defiance. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has details.
North Korea fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea on Thursday, the first in around 2 months.
Our military detected multiple short-range ballistic missiles of various types launched into the East Sea from the Wonsan area in North Korea between approximately 8:10 a.m. and 9:20 a.m. today.
The missiles are believed to include the KN-23, a North Korean version of the Iskander missile, and the KN-25, a 600mm super-large multiple rocket launcher. Some flew around 250 kilometers, landing near Al Island, a rock island at the frontal waters of Gilju-gun County of Hamgyong-pukto Province, while some of the others flew 350 kilometers and fell more than 100 kilometers beyond the island. While saying such missile launches are clear acts of provocation that seriously threaten peace on the Korean peninsula, the South Korean military said it is looking into the specifics, sharing information with the U.S. and Japan. Thursday's launch is the first since early March and the second ballistic missile launch since U.S. President Donald Trump returned to the White House on January 20th. As for the reason behind such provocation amid relatively peaceful times on the peninsula, with no whole Washington joint drills going on, nor any strategic assets in place, one expert says he agrees with the JCS's assessment that the missile launch is to test the weaponry for export to Russia.
North Korea is focusing efforts quite strategically on weapons that could be used immediately on the battlefields of the Ukraine war, including short and medium-range missiles. It appears the regime is continuously developing and testing those that are advantageous for export.
Responding to Pyongyang's missile launch, the Presidential National Security Office held an emergency meeting to discuss the missile launch and response measures. Presided by the second deputy director, the office said the government will closely monitor North Korea's movements and maintain a full readiness posture to respond to any provocations. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And South Korea has condemned North Korea for continuing to violate UN sanctions amid its missile and nuclear weapons ambitions. Remarks to this end were shared during a session of the Security Council at the UN headquarters in New York earlier on Wednesday, during which Seoul pointed to Pyongyang's illicit exports of coal and iron, shipments of weapons, and deployments of soldiers to Russia. South Korea also warned military collaboration between North Korea and Russia undermine broader global security. North Korea, for its part, found fault with the U.S. for tensions on the Korean peninsula. The Czech government has pre-approved the sealing of a nuclear power deal worth over 25 trillion won, or some $18 billion with South Korea. According to a press release on the Czech government's website, on Wednesday, the pre-approval was made during Czech Prime Minister Petra Fiala's meeting with Industry Minister Andokan. South Korea and the Czech Republic were initially scheduled to seal the deal this week, but a Czech court issued an injunction in response to a legal complaint filed by French energy company EDF that earlier lost the bid for the project to a consortium led by the Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to leave its lending rate unchanged amid uncertainty over the broader impact of the Trump administration's tariffs. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin covers the Fed's latest decision and its broader implications.
In its third monetary policy meeting of the year, the U.S. Fed has decided to continue its wait-and-see stance by keeping rates steady. The decision to keep the current key borrowing rate range of 4.25% to 4.5% on Wednesday extends a pause in the Federal Open Market Committee's rate-cutting cycle that began in January.
The risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation appear to have risen, and we believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments.
And these risks to employment and inflation, the two pillars of the Fed's dual mandate, stem from the uncertainty surrounding President Trump's tariffs. The decision to hold rates steady was thus unanimous despite weeks of pressure from Trump to lower them.
The latest consumer inflation report saw a 2.4% year-over-year rise in March. The one-year outlook compiled by the University of Michigan stand at 6.5%. The main driver of the jump in inflation expectation is, President Trump's tariff policy.
The rate freeze leaves a key interest rate gap between South Korea and the United States at 1.75 percentage points, based on the upper end of each country's rates. And the rate gap puts the BOK in a tough position ahead of its own meeting later this month, as an even larger gap could lead to capital outflows that push the won down further, raising import costs and adding to inflation. But Korea's central bank is likely to lower interest rates due to the sluggish domestic economy.
While the exchange rate is now in the upper 1,301 range, domestic factors are becoming more important for rate cuts. Ideally, the Fed would cut rates too, but given Korea's tough domestic situation, many expect the Bank of Korea to cut rates in May.
Data released by the central bank last month showed that the country's real gross domestic product, a key indicator of the economy, shrank by 0.2% on quarter in the first quarter. In response to the Fed leaving rates unchanged, Acting Finance Minister Kim Bum-seok said that the government will hold weekly macroeconomic and financial meetings to monitor markets and ensure economic stability. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump has rejected reducing tariffs on Beijing ahead of talks between his trade officials and their Chinese counterparts this coming Saturday in Geneva. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Amid escalating trade tensions between the United States and China, U.S. President Donald Trump said he won't lower his 145% tariff on Chinese imports before trade talks happen between the two countries. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Wednesday, Trump was asked if he would be open to pulling back on his tariffs in order to bring China to the negotiation table, to which he simply replied, no. The comments come as Beijing said earlier that meaningful negotiations would only happen if Washington lowers the 145% tariffs first. His comments come as a meeting between U.S. and Chinese trade officials is set to take place in Geneva on Saturday. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer are set to meet with China's economic chief He Feng in what could be the first step towards de-escalating tensions between the two economic powers. Speaking to Fox News earlier this week, Bessent said the trade talks will center mostly on de-escalating tensions and not on a big trade deal. Last month, President Trump raised import duties on Chinese goods to 145%, despite scaling back on his reciprocal tariffs on almost all other U.S. trading partners. China retaliated with steep tariffs on U.S. goods, further escalating the trade tensions. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the Trump administration plans to put the brakes on chip curbs crafted by the former Biden administration. The so-called framework for artificial intelligence diffusion seeks to maintain advanced computing power within the U.S. and among its allies, while blocking Chinese access by restricting exports of advanced AI chips. American companies were expected to comply with this AI diffusion framework starting May 15th. Officials under the current Trump administration say they are looking to replace this Biden-era plan with a, quote, simpler rule that may include separate bilateral accords between the U.S. and its partners. Russian President Vladimir Putin has held a series of summits ahead of the country's Victory Day, which falls on Friday this week. Earlier on Wednesday, he sat down with his Venezuelan counterpart Nicolas Maduro at the Kremlin. Also back on Wednesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping landed in Moscow for a 4-day state visit that includes attending the Victory Day celebration, which commemorates 80 years since the end of World War II. On the agenda of the summit between China and Russia on this Thursday were issues of mutual interest, including trade and stability. Over at the Vatican, Cardinals will resume voting on this Thursday as the first conclave vote ended on Wednesday without a successor to Pope Francis. Our Ione reports.
Black smoke rose from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican on Wednesday, signaling that the conclave had failed to elect a new pope on the first day. As the dark smoke curled into the night sky, a wave of disappointment swept through the crowd gathered at St. Peter's Square, many of whom have been waiting for hours.
It's an immersion. It's an immersion to be here, especially, and we will be here again tomorrow. It was expected to be black smoke today for the first vote.
The black smoke from the burning ballots came more than 3 hours after the start of the conclave, taking longer than expected. This was an hour longer than it took for smoke to appear after the first vote in the 2013 conclave that elected the late Pope Francis.
I would like it to be a pope who continues the legacy of Pope Francis, meaning that he's a more open, more liberal pope, because that is the way to attract people to the church.
To be elected, a new pope must secure at least 89 votes, a two-thirds majority. The conclave will resume on Thursday, with 133 cardinals from 70 countries voting in strict secrecy.
Yes, we'll come back tomorrow because we live here. So tomorrow from the morning, we'll be on the lookout to see if there's white smoke.
When a pope is chosen, white smoke will emerge from the chimney. Starting Thursday, the cardinals will hold 4 votes a day, 2 votes in the morning session and 2 in the afternoon. Ione, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, back here in Korea, the Busan International Film Festival turns 30 this year. And when the festival opens this fall, it will include a competition category for the first time. Our Cha Yun-kyung has details.
The Busan International Film Festival, the first international film festival in Korea, will introduce a competition category this year, transitioning from a non-competitive showcase to a competition format in order to secure its position as a powerhouse in the Asian film landscape. Marking the 30th anniversary this year, the BIFF's committee highlighted the need for a competition section to better recognize Asia's outstanding cinema and directors. The awards will be given with trophies like world-renowned film festivals.
We have decided to create the competition section since there was a need for change in format. We thought the same patterns were repeated over and over.
The Busan International Film Festival has grown from Korea's first international film festival to Korea's largest and has become a famous film festival loved by many filmmakers and audiences alike, not only in Asia but also around the world. This year, BIFF is revamping lots of programs to coincide with its 30th anniversary. The committee plans to invite a lot more movies and increase the number of theaters this year. There will be more sessions of Midnight Passion, a selection of horror and thriller films, to keep devoted fans awake throughout the night. Various forums to discuss the problems of Korean movies and their solutions will also be held. In a notable break with tradition, the grand prize winner will screen as the festival's closing film for a grand finale. Veteran filmmaker Min Gyu-dong will oversee both the opening and closing ceremonies, promising a more dynamic presentation for the landmark edition. There was also a generational transition within the organizing committee and programmers, seeking more flexible and efficient operation. The BIFF this year will be held for 10 days from September 17th at Busan Cinema Center and other selected theaters. Cha Yun-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the Middle East, Israeli airstrikes have struck densely populated areas in Gaza City, leading to more than 30 deaths. On Wednesday local time, Israeli airstrikes struck a crowded market and a nearby restaurant in Gaza City, resulting in the deaths of at least 33 people. The market was packed with people when the airstrike hit, causing immediate fatalities and injuries. Shortly after, a nearby restaurant, known to be operating as a community kitchen, was also hit, leading to additional casualties. The Israeli Defense Forces have stated that their operations are aimed at targeting Hamas militants. However, they have resulted in significant civilian deaths, drawing criticism from the international community. Germany's new government, led by Friedrich Merz, has announced plans to tighten border controls. The plans aim to reduce illegal migration and address concerns over security. Germany's Interior Minister Alexander Dobrindt on Wednesday detailed the government's strategy to bolster border security, including the deployment of an additional 3,000 police officers at the border. This would increase the total border force to 14,000. Stricter checks will be conducted and undocumented migrants will be turned away at the borders. While the new measures aim to deter illegal crossings, vulnerable individuals such as pregnant women and children will be permitted entry. The policy marks a shift from the previous administration's approach, which allowed many asylum seekers to enter Germany. Chancellor Merz emphasized that these actions are necessary to restore order and public confidence. Following a meeting in Paris with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, French President Emmanuel Macron announced on Wednesday that France will support the gradual lifting of European Union sanctions on Syria if Syria maintains a trajectory towards civil peace and harmony. Macron emphasized that if Syria continues on its current path, France will support the progressive easing of EU sanctions and lobby the United States to consider similar actions. Meanwhile, the Syrian leader also mentioned that Syria is engaging in indirect talks with Israel to prevent further hostilities in the region. Finally, Walt Disney announced on Wednesday that it plans to open its first theme park resort in the Middle East, selecting the United Arab Emirates capital Abu Dhabi as the location. Disney's seventh global resort and first new theme park in over a decade will be on Yas Island, a popular destination with many other family-friendly attractions. The project is a collaboration with Miral, a regional developer known for creating immersive destinations. The new resort aims to blend Disney's iconic storytelling with Abu Dhabi's rich culture and modern architecture. Disney CEO Bob Iger said the project will be authentically Disney and distinctly Emirati. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
We got a taste of early summer heat across the country on this Parents' Day under sunny skies. Then we have another round of rain in the forecast for the entire country starting early tomorrow. And we're forecasting some decent downpours along with thunderstorms. Jeju could see over 200 millimeters, 80 millimeters for the southern coast, and the rest of the country could be seeing 10 to 50 millimeters of showers. And afternoon highs will be nearly 10 degrees lower than today in the capital area, and the rest of the country will also notice breezier highs. But let's check on our lows first. Seoul, Gwangju, and Busan start off at 15 degrees Celsius tomorrow morning, but highs will not rise much from the lows. Getting up to 16 degrees in the capital, Daegu only tops out at 18 degrees. Now, rain will bring a dip in daytime highs through Saturday, with lingering rain in the forecast for central parts of Korea. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. A panel session is coming up right after this break, so do stay with us and thank you for now.